It's time to bring in our next guest, who is on our list here somewhere. This is Evan Bernstein. Bernstein, that's the first question we're going to ask him, because I still don't know if it's Bernstein or Bernstein or how you would know the pronunciation rule there. He is from the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, and there he is.
Hey.
So what is the answer to that lifelong, enduring question?
You mean as far as what, Douglas Adams?
Oh, maybe you didn't hear.
I didn't. I just came in. Yeah, I came in the last little part of that. What was that question, Brian?
We've been friends for years, and I'm embarrassed not to know. Is it Bernstein or Bernstein? And how do you know?
It's Bernstein because I say so, and that's how people know.
But do different people pronounce it differently?
Oh, yes. In fact, they pronounce my first name differently more often than my last name, actually. I get called Evan, I get called Ivan, I get called Kevin, I get called Red, I get called all kinds of different things. But at least it's a 50-50 shot I get with the last name.
Red I can pronounce.
Not so much.
I can live with Red. Just going to go with that.
Brian, how are you?
I am doing great. I was not sure I was still going to be on my feet at this point into the 13-hour marathon, but so far so good. So I'm just going to go with that.
Is it too soon in the show to congratulate you on 13 years of just fantastic work that you've done? Is it too soon for that?
It is never too soon for that. I thank you very much. In fact,
Thank you. We really appreciate everything that you've done. You've been, part of this for so long now. I think we sometimes take it for granted, all the hard work that you've put into this for practically as long as we at the Skeptics Guide have been doing this, and it really is commendable.
That was so passive aggressive.
I know I do that.
Appreciate the hard work you put in for nearly as long as we have. No, thank you. I appreciate that.
And of course, I don't mean that in a derogatory sense.
No, I'm teasing.
You know what I mean. You know what I mean. We've all, so many of us who have actually been in the podcasting business for quite a while, doing skepticism, doing this sort of heavy lifting that a lot of other groups, organizations, news outlets, and other places can't do, refuse to do. You've been there for all that time among several others, and I'm really happy to be part of the celebration today.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that. It's great to have you here, and I would like to point out that I did invite all of the. Well, I don't really know Kara very well, so the rest of you, I invited all of you, and I only heard back from you and Steve.
Is that right? Well, Jay and Bob's email must not be working or something.
I don't think I've ever received an email back from either one of them in my life. They just seem to not be email kind of guys.
Well, look, I'll put it to you this way. Steve, myself, you're kind of getting what you're going to get out of the Skeptic's Guide anyways, maybe with just the two of us. Sorry, Jay, Bob, I love you, we have fun.
It's totally
we
true.
Say these things, we've been working for more than 2 decades together on all sorts of skeptical goodiness, so I can say those things.
Okay, so now since we've been talking to so many podcasters today, long-timers, so far Dr. Kiki takes the record because This Week in Science was a college radio show before, as Pamela Gay pointed out, before RSS existed. So her show is 20 years old. So that beats all of us. But we've been talking to everyone about how long their show's been going, and you guys have, I guess, about a year and a half on Skeptoid. You're about, I think Steve said you're 14 and a half years old now?
Yep, that's where we are. Yep, we started in May of 2005.
But you said it goes back 20 years, so what was happening before that?
Well, it actually goes back, we're 23 years, if you want to be technical about it.
Wow.
1996, January 1, Stephen Novella, Perry DeAngelis, Bob Novella, the three of them are the official founders of the Connecticut Skeptical Society. See, back in the day when the internet was just a wee baby, there was not this robust international, worldwide skeptical community. It was really segmented and broken up into a lot of little organizations. Certainly we had SciCop. At the time, it was sort of leading the way as far as something along the way of a large national organization. The James Randi Educational Foundation had just started at around the same time as us, and Here in Connecticut, we didn't have anything. I mean, skeptic groups were mostly, made up of a handful of local groups out there, just in the region of the country. And there wasn't anything really official in our area. So we decided to go ahead and start it. And Perry and Steve and Bob sort of asked me on kind of early on. I'm very glad they did. I got in sort of at the ground floor with those guys. And we went out there and just started doing the things that other budding skeptics do. You do your local investigations. You go to the local haunts, pun intended. You go to the UFO conference. You go and see why they're talking about Bigfoot over at the high school over there. You just you just start to get your feet wet in this real interesting world of people's imaginations.
See, these are all the things that I've never really done. I've never gone and joined a group investigating a haunted house. I mean, there's no ghost there, I'm confident in saying, so I'm not worried that I'm missing anything. I've never gone and hunted down Bigfoot or anything. Although Lisa and I did go to pardon my arm, it doesn't bend. It's still on the elbow awareness campaign.
That's right.
We did go to the there's a Bigfoot club here in Bend, Oregon, and they have just an open pizza night at a pizza parlor where they rent out the back room and go around and everyone tells their Bigfoot stories. And we did go to that and had a lot of fun. Very nice folks. No one in the group had claimed to have seen Bigfoot, but they all firmly believed that it existed, no doubt in anyone's mind. And most of their evidence was that when they go hiking, they see trees like leaned against each other that they believe are a Bigfoot dwelling of some sort. But we had fun going there. So I never really did the grassroots thing.
Well, you didn't miss much out.
Yes.
But what it afforded us the chance to just sort of see how the other half lives, as I can borrow that saying. Mm-hmm. And it really, for us, struck a real nerve with us, if I can say that, when we did our own investigation of the Warrens, who are, Connecticut-based, very famous ghost hunters, for lack of a better term, and they were certainly in ascension in certain ways with more and more notoriety, and we thought it was kind of a big target to go after. But what else? If we're going to be doing this, there's no target too big, especially in our own backyard. And we decided to start engaging them in conversation, attending meetings with them, sort of shadowing them and places they would go and the investigations they would do. And we spent almost a year sort of doing our own investigation of them. And it turns out, obviously, that they had no evidence for anything that they were claiming. They're fervent believers in what they thought they were seeing, but the evidence that they showed us, which was sparse, was at best absolutely paper thin. And at some points we had to sort of point out to them exactly where they were going wrong in their thinking and why the photographs they were seeing and the videotapes that they were seeing weren't what they really thought they were.
So you met them. You knew them personally to some degree?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah, we did. We met with them several times. We actually went to their home. We got the tour of the basement. We saw Annabelle, the Raggedy Ann doll, behind the glass. Do not touch. Break in case of emergency. All the movies are based on this toy. Raggedy Ann, never saw so much popularity until the Warrens sort of came along and made it infamous, I suppose, in their own way. But yes, we had quite a few meetings with them, and it was really about a year before we sort of released our report, our collective report, which got some traction here in Connecticut. Newspapers here in Connecticut certainly did pick up on it. And at that point, we sort of realized that, all right, there's these people who make these claims and who are out there, and just because they have the notoriety, and just because they're excellent storytellers, perhaps, there is nothing there. The emperor has absolutely no clothes, to borrow a phrase. And we realize, we're way overestimating these people and kind of giving them too much credit in a sense that they think what they're doing is scientific. It has some of the trappings of science. They like to use technical jargons and sound scientific, but absolutely zero there when you pull the shell off.
Right.
And that was a big reveal for us. So we're like, okay, so we sort of took a different attitude in a certain sense from there on, and it became more like, all right, instead of us sort of going out and proving them wrong, they're gonna have to really do more to impress us and make us really instill in us an urge to go and figure out what they're talking about, to investigate them and some other places that got a hold of us and wanted to come and talk with them. We just treated them differently because we realized that for all of their bravado, for all the stories that they tell, it's all a shell game. It's all either they're too wrapped up in their own belief system, or they just have no clue what it is they're talking about, what they're seeing, what they're hearing. And we no longer overestimated this group of true believers.
So I obviously never met them. I don't know them, but only from hearing interviews. I've listened to podcasts and interviews and everything, and what I gathered was that Ed was the husband. What was the wife's name?
Lorraine.
Ed, thank you. Ed was most likely not a believer, that he was consciously deceptive and just more of a con man than a believer. And Lorraine convinced herself to believe because it validated the things that Ed said. That if she believed in ghosts, that means everything her husband said was not a lie. Is that perhaps too analytical and too contrived a view of them? You think they were genuinely true believers?
I think how you described it is pretty accurate. And if you ask people like Joe Nickel, who also has had direct dealings with the Warrens, I think he would say generally the same thing, but he would also perhaps add that Ed had sort of a nasty streak to him, a bit of bitterness.
I've heard that many times, yeah.
Just not a pleasant person to be around, and I know he's been accused of outright, lying and making threats and doing sort of these other things. But I think generally how you described it is correct. Lorraine really came from the position of heartfelt belief, devoutly religious belief, and that was what drove her. But Ed saw other opportunities there. Sure, he had his level of belief, but at the same time, he realized that he had something here that he could sort of turn into a business. And at a certain point, the P.T. Barnum in him probably took over more than any belief that he may have had.
Now, why would they give you guys the time of day? Why would they spend any time with you guys?
In order to gain some extra level of credibility in a certain sense.
They thought this was PR for themselves, or?
Oh, sure, yeah. I think they saw it as an opportunity to say, hey, we've invited even these skeptics in to analyze what we've been doing. And as you can see, we continue to scientifically examine ourselves. And by doing these sorts of invitations with folks like this who are of a different mind, and this is the way we are able to validate to our group, our organization, and to other people all over the place that what we're doing is a real endeavor, and not just stuff that we're interested in talking about. So I think they saw us as sort of a way to validate the work that they were doing, and also maybe to a certain extent they were hoping that they could have at least some of us come around to their way of thinking about it. Even if they could get one of us in our group to come over, right, to the other side, that's it. That's victory at that point.
Well, they got Jay. I mean, we have to
not to be the skeptic, and I mean that's like a gold bracelet or a gold medal you wear around your neck in a certain sense. So they didn't get that, far from it, and when it was coming time to close up our investigation, and we told them, unless they had anything else, we were going to wrap up. And Ed says to Steve, after Steve basically tells him, look, it's our article, our report on you is not going to really go the way you think you want it, and we're going to, just tell our readers of our newsletter at the time and the press who we were dealing with exactly our thoughts, that nothing was happening there. Ed said to Steve, oh, you're going to make me look like a chump, aren't you? So he kind of just got defensive in a certain way about it. But at that point was sort of resigned to the fact, I think at that moment, that they weren't able to get what they wanted, I think, out of us. I think that's why they decided to allow us to sort of come into their world in a certain sense, but didn't quite go the way they wanted.
Like, no, Ed, you're the one who makes you look like a chump.
Exactly. Well, that's exactly right. And I think we didn't say it to him. We, after the fact, said pretty much exactly that. Said, no, Ed, you did that.
So when you guys don't still do this kind of local grassroots investigation stuff, do you?
No, not since we've been doing the podcast, like in 2005. We shifted our efforts at that point because we actually had done several investigations in and around the state of Connecticut, maybe 10, 12 or so, very low profile kinds of things, but we went to a couple of different places in the state, which, every Halloween they come up in the newspaper, is this place, this place is haunted, and the mediums are gathering for their seances at the Carousel restaurant in Seymour, Connecticut, each October for seances and these sorts of things. So we went to those places and did that again for maybe eight, 9 years. But once we had sort of our fill of it, and at a certain point, these investigations become, predictable, repetitive. There was nothing more really for us to squeeze out of it for the people in our organization. And we decided we were going to move on to some other things and use the internet a little bit more to start reaching out to a broader audience. And this is all about the time that podcasting was just coming onto the scene, 2004, 2005.
Yeah. And
we said, these are our dinner table conversations, is basically what you're hearing on our podcast. Really are, we talk about the news of the day and, science news of the day. And that's really sort of the genesis of the show. And we just said, let's just put this down. Let's just record this thing and see how it turns out. That's the route we decided to go.
So a young person coming up through the ranks and being interested in this, would you advise them to do the whole investigation thing the way that you guys did? Do you think there's value in doing that?
I think maybe there was a time, Brian, where I would say definitely yes to that, because it is something to experience. You can get a good sense for not just the personalities of the people who are making the claims, but sort of patterns that they all seem to fall into, the traps, if I may say, that of bad thinking, bad logic. So in a certain sense, that's good. However, nowadays, so much of it has been done. There are so many skeptical groups out there that have done this kind of work, and I don't want to say it's oversaturated in a sense, but it may just not be as necessary, perhaps, as it once was. Because let's face it, there's so much on the internet to glean, to go over. How many videos, YouTube channels and videos are there of us talking about these kinds of things, of other people doing these kinds of investigations? There's so much of it, whereas you couldn't say that exactly 14, 15 years ago. So it may not be necessary nowadays. There's just so much that has already been done that a person can, simply, I think, just sort of educate themselves first. But at the same time, there's no harm in doing so. And there's certainly no shortage of opportunities or people making claims. So that's never ever a problem. But necessary, I don't know that it's a really a necessary step. anymore.
I think I agree with you that I would not be likely to advise someone that they should do that. Even though you could do something like pick up Ben Radford's book on the scientific investigation of ghosts and whatever the title is, probably got it wrong, and go out and follow those methods. And yes, of course you're not going to find a ghost, and yes, I know ghosts don't exist. We're not going there to see if we're going to find a ghost or not. We know we're not going to.
Right.
But what is interesting is we might find out why people think there's a ghost there. We might see a kind of thing that we never would have thought of otherwise that would persuade a smart person to think there's something unexplainable happening in this room of this house or whatever it is. Whatever that might turn out to be. And there's some surprising things in Ben's book and the stories that he and Kenny Biddle, who we talked to earlier this evening, that they talk about. So there's value in that, but I think looking at the overall picture, I'd still agree with you with what you said. There's just so much more that you can do because that's already been done to death. Is there value in doing it? Yeah, there probably is, but you can get that and more. I feel a little bit of a sense of loss in that because, getting out there with boots on the ground is, an increasingly rare experience these days.
It is, and I don't want to discourage anyone from doing it or trying it. That's not what this is. Again, there's no harm in doing it. It just is not. It's not a prerequisite for anything. It's not like you feel like you have to. It's not an apprenticeship step, on your way to your skeptical awareness. That you have to go ahead and do that. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, if you are interested in doing that, there's still plenty of opportunities. Skepticism is the art of holding the ocean back with a broom in a certain sense because of the amazing amount of crazy beliefs that are out there that just, don't go away. These are unsinkable rubber ducks, as we like to call them. They wax, they wane, they bob up and down in the water, but you're rarely going to find a case where a pseudoscience will ever go away entirely, or a paranormal belief. That is so rare. And they pop up and they come back in very unexpected ways. I think Flat Earth, perhaps, is a very good example of that. I don't know that we were really talking that much 25 years ago about Flat Earth belief. It was considered, it just wasn't on the forefront of many people's minds. Well, fast forward now to the 2010s, the late 2010s, and what do we have? We've got, I don't know, millions of people who claim to have that there's something to this flat Earth theory. It's just wild stuff, and that's all part of the internet being the double-edged sword that it is. So these things never go away.
Google Trends, that's one case where Google Trends has proven to be a really revealing research tool. I did an episode on the new flat Earth belief, not the old biblical literalism based flat Earth beliefs of the 1800s and 1900s, but this new modern 2000s conspiracy theory, alternate science driven version of flat Earth. And the neat thing is that Google Trends existed in the days of the new flat Earth belief, and you can see that it was completely non-existent until we were able to identify Case Zero, this guy who wrote an ebook and then made a YouTube video, and then someone else made a YouTube video that was more popular, and you can find these videos in their original upload date, and you can match that exactly to Google Trends. And it's incredible. You learn these patterns that, it's a phenomenal, really eye-opening tool. I love it.
It's a little hard to predict, too. I'm trying to think right now of what might be, some cranky belief right now that nobody's really paying attention to. And look, in 20 years, it could be, you could have tens of millions of people flocking to it because maybe some celebrity in the future is going to be talking about it or touting it or some. It's very hard to predict.
You've just suggested the ultimate tool that we need, which is like a reverse version of Google Trends, where you can define the trend you're looking for, but you don't know what the term is, and
Right.
it'll find the matching term. So we could conceivably go back 3 months and then draw a line that goes like this and say, okay, what is that? Okay, yeah, subtract out Trump and impeachment and all of that stuff, and just limit it to, diet fads and things like this. And there is something that's on the rise right now that we haven't heard of yet, but that's going to be big in the news. And it might just be the next thing. It might be the next, name the Pop Woo diet fad. There's too many to keep up with. That would be cool.
Yeah, it would be. It definitely would be. I think what it does show, though, is that the work of a skeptic is never done, amateur, professional, or otherwise. It is omnipresent. It is always necessary. And we continue to, even those of us who are veterans, we are still learning, and every day is a new learning experience. You never stop. The learning really never stops. And our efforts are needed, perhaps more than ever, especially as, because, again, the internet just has a way of spreading craziness like wildfire. You know that.
Do you remember?
I really have to tell people that. But
there was a time at
truth.
One of the, I think the TAM Australia, the first TAM Australia that they had, there was, I'm not sure if you were on this panel, there was a whole bunch of us on a panel sitting down there. Remember, this was in like some Masonic lodge. Do you remember that? To set the scene?
Do.
There was like a big...
I do. You moderated a panel. I was on, Rebecca Watson was on, and along with some other folks.
Well, I don't think I was moderating the panel I'm thinking of, but I was sitting next to Randy, and there was a bunch of other people, and I at least one of you guys was on that panel. But the question came down: does the internet make our job easier or harder? And I think I was the only one on the panel who said, I don't think it makes any difference at all, because the rising tide raises all boats equally, and just as easy as it is for us to promote good information, it's just as easy for them to promote bad information. And I think we're always going to be at a disadvantage because they have the economic engine behind them and we don't. And Randy went off on the fact that, yes, but we're right. Our information stands up. And I don't think that has ever mattered. I don't think that's ever been a part of what people choose to believe or not believe, whether it's true or not. I mean, come on, that's just proven not to be a big part of people's belief systems. And he got lots of cheers for that, and I got lots of jeers for my answer. But I don't know. I'm just not a believer.
Looking back on that, right? I mean, I'm not sure that you'd have the same. You would not have the same audience reaction today, would you? No, I don't think so.
Probably not.
So.
Well,
I would love to say. Yeah, no, I would love to say that there's a magic potion. There's a button we can push. That gives us all the perfect tools we need in our toolkit to fight this stuff and be even more effective at it. But that's just not the case. It just takes dedication and hard work. Good old rolling up your sleeves and never relenting. That
is absolutely true. I mean, my job has never gotten any easier in 13 years. I got to sit there at the desk and I'm like the accountants rowing in the scarlet permanent assurance, the crimson permanent assurance. I think some people get that reference.
Is there a layer of hell where some guy's pushing a boulder up a hill and kind of always comes rolling back down on him? I forget that character's name, but it's
Sisyphus?
Maybe similar to that. Yes,
Sisyphus,
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. We've got about 60 seconds left. What can you tell us interesting in 60 seconds? Going to time you.
Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, we're going to be going to New Zealand and Australia end of November, early December. So for our friends down in those areas of the world, we would love to see it at those conferences. Plenty of information online about those. And also, Some people know that for a couple years we've been doing what we call the Skeptical Extravaganza of some significance. George Robb and the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe have teamed up to do this, what I call Skeptical Vaudeville show, that we've done in coordination with skeptical conferences mostly. But we're breaking out and we're sort of doing this touring bit of our show on our own. And we've already got a website up. We have 4 dates of our tour. Los Angeles, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and New York, and we're going to be taking suggestions from listeners as to which cities you would like for us to come and visit, and we'll be adding on to that, so stay tuned for more announcements regarding that.
Well, I can give you one suggestion. You need much more singing and dancing in your show. From all of you, not just from George.
Singing, dancing, got it. Got it.
All right, it's time for us to get off and disconnect, but thank you very much for spending the time with us. Much appreciated. Gosh, you're in the middle of the night. I forgot to thank you for that. You're one of the people who I needed to change the schedule around, and I really appreciate you coming through with me and taking the horrible time slot, so thank you very much.
For you, Brian, anytime. Congratulations, 13 years and counting. Keep it going, my friend.
All right, I'll see you later.
Bye, Brian.